Hey guys, Persephone Plasmids here. I realized that I've been gone for like 18 years, but that's because I have 3 kids, all under 5, so my life is a circus. But when I saw that they had released a trailer for Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix, I had to hop on here and do a quick trailer breakdown. I'm being a little bit quiet right now because those 3 kids are asleep. You might get kind of an ASMR trailer breakdown. So first of all, I just want to start this off by saying that Mike Flanagan is a genius. I am an author, right? I'm a storyteller by nature, by profession, and I can say with 100% certainty that he is the most phenomenal storyteller ever. I guess that's kind of a broad statement, but every single thing that I have seen that he has done has been so just terrifying, but also deep and touching and heartfelt and just complex and dimensional and just perfect. So if you have not checked out his other works, you really need to. My favorite one is definitely Haunting of Hill House, but Haunting of Bly Manor is a very close second. I would also suggest you check out some of his movies. Hush is really, really good. Oculus is, plus it has Karen Gillan, which I love her. Midnight Mass and Midnight Club are both spectacular. Dr. Sleep, amazing. Basically anything that you can find that Mike Flanagan has done, you need to watch because everything is perfection. So Fall of the House of Usher will be released on Netflix on October 12th, which is significant because that's the day before Friday the 13th in October, which is when my book comes out. So if you need some lighthearted ghosts after Fall of the House of Usher, you can check out My Not So Rad Afterlife, which will be out on October, Friday the 13th. Okay, shameless self-promotion over. Let's get into this trailer. Okay, so one of the very first scenes that we see is somebody walking into the house who looks corpsey. Is corpsey a word? They look corpsey. For those of you who are not familiar with Fall of the House of Usher, I'm not sure how much to explain and how much to say. You don't want to spoil it, but I will say Mike Flanagan has a habit of taking an entire body of an author's work and then meshing it all together into a story with brand new characters or characters that are slightly tweaked from what they were in the original stories. And so even if you have read all of Edgar Allan Poe's stories, I don't think that you're really going to be spoiled for this show. Haunting of Hill House was not an exact replica of the book by Shirley Jackson. It had a lot of tweaks to it. Haunting of Bly Manor also, it took the entire body of work from the author and put little elements throughout the entire thing. I think it's pretty safe to say the same thing is going to happen with Fall of the House of Usher based on the trailer and definitely based on some of the character names. So right away we see a raven, which, you know, the whole thing. Basically, Poe loves ravens. He loves ravens and he loves clocks. Both ravens and clocks feature very heavily in Poe's work, and both feature very heavily in this trailer, so not really much of a surprise. We also get a good shot in a courtroom of Carl Lumbly, who is playing Dupin, who is arguably one of the first literary detectives, even though Poe never actually used the word detective. He predates a lot of detective stories and has even been cited as the inspiration for Sherlock Holmes, so I'm excited that they're going to be including him in this. He shows up in, I think, 3 Poe stories, though it might be more than that. So I'm excited to see him interact with all the characters. And the younger version of him will be played by Malcolm Goodwin, who you might know from iZombie. We also get a good look at Ruth Codd, who you may recognize from Midnight Club. Okay, so then we get a nice shot of the dinner table in the House of Usher. We see a lot of the family members as well as Matt Bedell, who is going to be playing William Wilson. Now, William Wilson is a short story by Poe about a man who has somebody with the same exact name and birthday as him follow him around his entire life, and he's always like getting him into trouble, but he can only speak in a whisper, so he whispers like all of the guy's secrets to people around him and basically ruins his life. So I'm very interested to see how William Wilson is going to play into this story, because his short story is very unsettling and creepy, but also very ambiguous. Now might be a good time also to point out some of the names of the characters, because they are definitely going to be meshing names from other stories. So Carla Gugino, who I love, is playing Verna, which a few people have speculated is an anagram of Raven, which makes sense. We see her a few more times in the trailer, and each time it seems like she is referencing a different Poe story. Henry Thomas is going to be playing Frederick Usher. The first name Frederick might be a reference to Poe's story Metzengerstein, about a man who was orphaned at a young age and then inherited a large amount of wealth. And there's a whole thing with a horse and the horse killing him and his horse kind of being the neighbor, sort of. Anyways, but that might be why his name is Frederick, but I'm not sure. Tia Miller, who you might recognize from The Haunting of Bly Manor, who she was amazing in that. Her character Victorine, last name that I can't pronounce, I'm not positive what role she's going to play in this. A couple of her appearances do look a bit like some Poe stories, but as far as the name goes, I can't really place it. It might be an obvious thing that I'm missing. Kylie Curran is going to be playing Lenore Usher. I feel like maybe that might be combining a little bit, you know, The Raven and Fall of the House of Usher. Saryan Sapkota, who is also in Midnight Club, is going to be playing Prospero Usher. Now this is super interesting to me because Prospero would be Prince Prospero from The Mask of the Red Death. One more bout of shameless self-promotion. I'm currently in the process of adapting The Mask of the Red Death into a young adult novel, so I've been like meticulously studying this story for months. So when I saw that his character name was Prospero, I freaked out a little bit and squealed because Mask of the Red Death is my favorite Poe story, and I've just been studying it. My whole entire life has been Mask of the Red Death lately. We also see his character later in a party where everything is red, which, you know, again, works with the Masquerade Ball in Mask of the Red Death. Bruce Greenwood and Zach Gilford are going to be playing Broderick Usher. Now, Roderick is the main character in The Fall of the House of Usher. I mean, I guess arguably you could say the unnamed narrator is the main character, but Roderick is the one that he interacts with the most. He is the character who invites the narrator to come and stay with him, and then later on says that his sister has died and they need to bury her, but the narrator notices that his sister has some signs of life, but they bury her anyway, and then a little while later she comes back from the grave, scares her brother to death, and the entire house cracks down the middle and falls into the earth. That's probably not going to be what happens in this adaptation because Mike Flanagan likes to take a lot of liberties, which I love because he makes brand new awesome stories. Already in the trailer they say something about their brother dying, so that makes me think maybe it will be a brother instead of Madeline, the sister, but they do have someone playing Madeline. So we also have Igby Rigby. Oh my gosh, why is that so hard to say? We also have Igby Rigney, who will be playing Toby. Toby is a character from Never Bet the Devil Your Head, where the man always goes around saying, oh, I bet the devil I could do this. Or he says, I bet the devil my head I could do this. And then one day an old man is like, oh, why don't you bet the devil your head that you can jump over that bar? And so he tries to and gets decapitated by a pole that Toby didn't see up there. And then the old man, who I guess is the devil, takes his head and leaves. So maybe Toby's gonna lose his head. I don't know. Crystal Ballant is playing Morel Usher, which I find interesting. I'm wondering if that's supposed to be similar to Morella from the story Morella, where a woman dies in childbirth, but as she is dying says that she will live on through her child. As her child gets older, the father of the child notices that she looks so much like her mother Morella that he doesn't want to give her a name and suspects that there might be some evil living within the child. So when the child turns 10 and they go to have her baptized, the priest asks what her name is, and the father says Morella, which is the name of her late mother. As he says this, the young girl says, I am here, and then dies. As the father picks up young Morella's body to bring it back to their family tomb, he finds that his wife's body is gone and only the little girl's body is left. So it's suggested that she was reincarnated somehow through her daughter. I'm interested to see how this is going to play out in The Fall of the House of Usher, especially because Morel Usher, I'm guessing it is Morella, and I'm wondering if any of that story is going to be coming into play or if he's just using the names as like a nice little Easter egg for Poe fans. Now, one thing that I really didn't do a lot of research on, which is amazing because it's Mark Hamill, who I love, I didn't really do a lot of research as to who his character is. I know he is Detective Pym, but I don't know where that name comes from or like what story he really is from. So that's just going to be a fun little surprise for us. Can I just say that I love Kate Siegel in this? She looks amazing. We get a nice little sneak peek of Prospero's party, just like Mask of the Red Death, where Carla Gugino walks in wearing the Mask of the Red Death, which again, my little fangirl heart is just squealing because that is the one I'm adapting into a book and I'm so excited to see it have some love. I feel like it's not one that people talk about as much of Poe stories and I'm just so excited to see it on the screen. And of course, I love my girl Carla, so. And when asked what her name is, she says Consequence, which makes sense because in Mask of the Red Death, she is the consequence of everybody in the Abbey just ignoring the pandemic that is going on outside and instead deciding to just be frivolous and party and just do whatever they want and ignore this deadly illness that is ravaging the rest of the countryside. We see Raoul Colley's character looking at what I believe is a cat in the shadows, which I'm thinking would be a reference to the Black Cat, where the character kind of goes a little bit crazy and, you know, unalives his cat, but then, anyways, you know, in true Poe fashion, he gets his comeuppance, so I'm wondering if that's what that's a reference to, maybe. So we also get to see Samantha Sloyan, who is going to be playing Tamerlane Usher. I love her because she's so versatile. Like, in Hill House, you love her so much, but in Midnight Mass, you just despise her. Same with Midnight Club. She is very versatile because it's very rare to find someone that I can love and hate at the same time. So again, we get to see Tania Miller, which I love, and we also see somebody falling down in a white room, which makes me again think of the Mask of the Red Death because each of the rooms has a window of a different color. Although with falling down, I would assume that they would be in the red room, but I don't know. Okay, this is an interesting thing to me. At one point, we see this kind of like writhing blob on the ground, and it made me think of two different Poe stories. So the first one was The Man That Was Used Up, where there was this amazing man that everybody in the town talked about and said, oh, he did all of these amazing things and he's perfect and he is a perfect human specimen. And when the narrator goes to see him, he is literally just a blob of like body parts on the ground that the butler has to reassemble in order for him to be alive and talk. And it was just said that he was completely used up on all of his good deeds, that there was nothing left of him. Or it also might be a reference to Valdemar from The Facts of the Case of M. Valdemar, where at the end of the story he like basically just disintegrates into a blob, so that's kind of what that made me think of, but I don't know, we'll see. The whole I've got an appointment with your dad thing is very interesting, especially because she then puts the Mask of the Red Death on a corpse, which, I mean, with this being an adaptation of Poe, that corpse could be literally anybody since everyone's always dying in these stories. It kind of looked like William Wilson is maybe married to Tamerlane Usher in this, which would be kind of interesting, especially because she is the one who in her house later on, she sees somebody walking around. Now, if William Wilson is his character from his short story from Poe, then he would have a double of himself walking around, which might be what she's seeing, or maybe she's the one that's actually doubled now. Another thing that we're seeing a lot of in this trailer are clocks. There are so many clocks. There are clocks ringing and chiming and ticking and visuals of clocks. And again, Poe talks about clocks a lot in his books. There's so much about clocks. Again, Mask of the Red Death, we have the clock that chimes every hour and everyone stops dancing for a minute and then they just start up again. We have the woman who sticks her head through a clock. We have all sorts of clocks in Poe stories. So we also get a glimpse of the pit and the pendulum. So I'm excited that's being included. We also see Roderick Usher standing in, I'm guessing it's the dining room, looking up at a painting, which in the original story, he has a very large painting collection, but paintings also feature prominently in a couple of other Poe stories, namely The Oval Portrait, which is a predecessor of Picture of Dorian Gray, and a lot of people think that is what inspired that book. We see another red room, could be Mask of the Red Death. We see Carlo Gugino holding a cat, which again, kind of like the Black Cat story. Okay, so here we see something that looks a lot like the Cask of Amontillado, which is a story of Poe's where someone is lured down into a basement, the man chains him up, and then walls him in. That's kind of what this whole, like, torture room sort of reminds me of. And then we also see Roderick covered in blood. Part of that reminds me a little bit of Bernice, which is a short story by Poe where there's a man who has, I guess for lack of a better term, OCD. I also have OCD. But, you know, I didn't end up like this guy. But in Bernice, he obsesses about her teeth and then wakes up one day to find a box of her teeth after she's passed away. And he's horrified because he's not sure if he killed her or what happened. But yeah, Roderick sitting there all bloody with a little box makes me think of Bernice. We see another raven. Okay, this right here is very interesting. Carla Gugino standing there with one of her eyes hanging out because it reminds me of the story by Poe, A Predicament, where there's a woman named Zenobia who, for some reason, they're very specific about her 3-foot tall poodle and her, I think it was like 5-foot tall slave or something. And she goes to this town and decides that she wants to get a look out of the clock face. So she sticks her head out of the clock. But as she does, the minute hand comes and starts to decapitate her. And as it does, her eyes pop out before she's fully decapitated. But even after being decapitated, because this is a Poe story, she's still alive and can like talk to her own body and stuff. But that is very much what this reminds me of, because in that story, she loses her eye. Okay, this is really cool. We get a scene of a monkey on an operating table, which reminds me so much of the short story by Poe called Hop Frog, which is where this court jester is treated very badly by the rich people that he works for, and he tells them, oh, you guys should dress up in monkey suits for this masquerade ball, it'll be so fun. So they do, but everybody thinks that they're real and end up suspending them up from the ceiling, where Hop Frog then lights them on fire. And it's too late once people realize that they are people in monkey suits, because they are suspended from the ceiling and Hop Frog and his friend get away. I mean, I don't know why else there would be a monkey on an operating table. I'm assuming it's the monkey suit from Hop Frog, but we'll find out. We also then get a close-up of something on an operating table, some person, and I've been trying to decide if I think that this is someone taking out the heart, like Telltale Heart, because I haven't really found another reference to Telltale Heart in the trailer, but you know it's gonna be in there. That's like one of the most famous stories by Poe. So I'm trying to decide if that's them taking out the heart for Telltale Heart, or it could be the experiments that were performed on Mr. Lack-O-Breath. Yeah, you heard me right. Lack-O-Breath. It's a guy that lost his breath and can't breathe, but he's still alive. But people think he's dead because he can't breathe. We also see Tania Miller with a bunch of blood around her heart area. I'm kind of wondering if she's gonna be the one that loses the heart. Okay, so again, we see Samantha Sloyan in her house, and she's wielding a weapon, but then we see her, maybe, walking away, which makes me think that maybe she is the double. I mean, she's married to William Wilson, supposedly, maybe. I don't actually know. I'm speculating that she's married to William Wilson in this story, and his story is famous for being a double. So I'm kind of wondering if they are turning that around and now she is the one that's going to have a double in her house. They also use a lot of mirrors with her around, which makes me again think the William Wilson double story. Okay, so we also get this amazing shot of Roderick Usher looking out the window and bodies falling from the sky. This also happens later in the trailer, which I think maybe in reference to The Angel of Odd, which is this story where this person says like, no, none of these crazy coincidences or odd things happen. And the Angel of Odd is like, oh, just you wait, you're about to have a very confusing few weeks as all this terrible, weird stuff happens to you. At the very end of the story, one of the things that happens is he falls from the sky into his house in an ironic twist of like, oh, I just had this rebuilt, and anyways, it's a whole thing. But Angel of the Odd is what that makes me think of, all the bodies falling from the sky. It could also just be a reference to the fall of the House of Usher, because I'm thinking the house in this adaptation is not going to be the house, but the family as a whole. And then again, we see Prospero in his Mask of the Red Death Party. We see somebody like either falling onto a bed in a green room or levitating up off a bed in a green room. I think maybe my brain is just completely fried from studying Mask of the Red Death so much, because obviously I'm like, oh, the green room, yeah. I think I'm so focused on Mask of the Red Death that I'm assuming everything is that, and it's probably not. Then we get the body falling again, which could be Angel of the Odd, and we get this last line from Carla Gugino saying, "May it rest in peace," which is the last line spoken in the Cask of Amontillado, where the man walls in this person alive because of some perceived slight, and they think that that's a good punishment. So yeah, that was a very quick and dirty trailer analysis and just some of my predictions about what will be happening in the fall of the House of Usher. I cannot even begin to describe how excited I am for this. I feel a little bit like a broken record when I talk about Mike Flanagan, because he is just such a good storyteller. I love creepy things. Like, obviously I love creepy things. I'm studying to become a mortician and I write horror novels. Like, I love creepy stuff. But it's not just that, it's that he takes creepy things and then injects so much life and heart and dimension into them, and it's just freaking brilliant. So he's definitely on my bucket list of people to meet, because just brilliant storyteller. Tell me what other references you guys found for the fall of the House of Usher in the trailer that I might have missed, because as much as I love Poe, I'm not an expert. Fun fact before we go out is that Poe died on October 7th, and that's my birthday, so I like to think that we have a special connection in life and death. Cannot wait for Fall of the House of Usher. Let me know what you guys think, and if you're excited, and what references I missed. Sorry that I'm super inconsistent on this channel, but again, I have 3 really young kids and a job, and I'm starting mortuary science school, and books coming out, and my life is a circus. A fun circus, but a circus. Anyways, see you guys in the next video, whatever that's gonna be. Bye.